Hello, wonderful being. You matter. And I am so grateful to be able to find words or any kind of offering that helps you remember that. And also to thank you for spending your time in these explorations with me. I want you to know how deeply meaningful that is. So thank you for being here. Um, it's always helpful to stop and to kind of pull back the layers of confusion around what things like relative and absolute mean. Let's do that together for just a moment. So, the relative and the absolute, the microcosm and the macrocosm. Another fun way of looking at that is small r reality and capital R reality. Here's the thing about these, we'll call them dynamics, is that one does not exclude the other. That which is the macrocosm, the entire cosmology of this um, undefined thing we call the universe, is not separate from or void of what is happening right here in this little tiny minuscule being called David or you. It doesn't exclude your human circumstances or your world. And on that same level of exploration, it also does not mean that you are separate from it, the indefinable. And so, without either of these two elements being excluded, but being an example of what a polarity is, right? That you can have these seeming polar opposites, but they are both unionized, they are one. And so there's a sort of game here then that when we get lost in everything that is a microcosm or the small r relative reality, i.e., our world, our challenges, our pain, our suffering, we can forget. Um, there are what is called veils of illusion that seem to weigh heavy upon us and compound our experience of forgetfulness. And so, what shakes us from that? What becomes things, people, motivators, experiences that systematically remove those? And that becomes the personal quest because that in its ultimate perfection are the things that call us home. Person, place, or thing, environment, personality, whatever connection, mystical experience, whatever it is that is responsible for removing the layers that have fooled us into thinking that we are separate is exactly what this journey is comprised of. And so today I want to give you that reminder and to help support you in the recognition that there is um, a divine, a perfect patterning that is never void of even the microcosmic experience. In other words, when the world seems to be going to just ultimate crap, that divine order, divine perfect patterning is still at play. That's the paradox. And so it becomes something of a personal quest or a mission for you and I to move forward into the unexplored capacity of possibility with each living breath, regardless of age, regardless of story, regardless of anything that is labeled the past, because that principle of what we will call the absolute, the perfect pattern, that principle is never bound by circumstance or previous conditions. It's like it lies in wait, hand holding, reaching out, beckoning us to go on our individual journeys. I offer that as a sort of necessary resuscitation sometimes when we feel like we are drowning, when we feel like everything that we had banked on is crumbling. And the reason why I wanted to start with this is because there's an interesting little play that happens with language. For example, there is a very famous spiritual mandate that says, um, what you resist, persist. What does that mean? What we have an aversion to, or what we consciously, mostly unconsciously, keep pushing away, persist. Why? Because whatever it is that is exposing itself in our lives is there for a divine, perfect opportunity to transcend its limiting nature, to go beyond that circumstance or that experience in its small r reality to see the grander design. That is an ongoing lesson. That is an ongoing part of the journey to reclaiming self awareness. And that experience, for all intents and purposes, is unpleasant. It 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 pulls and pushes at us, and it wants us to think that it's insurmountable, or there's no thinking involved. That's just what it feels like. And so we resist it because it's uncomfortable, because it's foreign, because everything in small r reality tells us to protect and shield ourselves from it. Our ancestors have taught us that our circumstances and environment, everything is just this big saturation of protect yourself, right? And so we are not at blame to this impulse and reactions that we have to the things that feel difficult, to the things that seem to rob us of our security. And so we resist it. We build beautiful, intricate systems of resistance, and we pride ourselves often on these things. But then the spiritual axiom tells us what? What you resist persists. So, what is the solution then? So there's question number one. Question number two, or example number two is um, the word resistance is used to describe people who rise up against any form of inequality, and they said no. They say no. They continue to beckon and enroll others to stand up and say, no, we will not stand for this. That's called the resistance. That is a part of the makeup of freedom fighters and people who have moved the needle towards more democratic, uh, equal opportunity for those who are seemingly marginalized in the human experience. Resistance, resistance. What you resist persists. Resistance meaning I will not be held down. I know my rights and I advocate for those things. So are those two separate words with two different meanings? Or are they both examples of this polarity? So I've been sitting with this a lot, trying to find a find the wisdom within myself to reconcile within me because I fully understand and have experienced, as I imagine you have, that what I resist persists, what I avoid just keeps circling back until I'm willing to look at it. But then on the other hand, here I am understanding, and what I love is that things like joy. Joy is an act of resistance to despair. I can get on board with that. So where is the the limitation, if you will, within language? It isn't so much then I don't believe a limitation in language. It's understanding that each of these things have a similarity, a commonality to them. And that thing is acceptance. You see over here, what I resist persist means that I have not yet arrived at accepting the relative reality. And so, because it's uncomfortable, because it threatens something within me, because it continues to add the veils of forgetfulness with regards to understanding my absorption in the absolute, I want to run away from it. I have not accepted that that's part of the game, or that's part of what comes with being human. Being human means that I live in relative reality. In other words, I live in duality. I live in a construct of separatism of us and them. Until I can see that and accept that for what it is, not for my truth, but for what it is environmentally, socially, in the illusion of this thing called being human, then I will always try to avoid and fight it because I think it holds power over me. Over here, this kind of resistance about resisting the forceful nature of inequality means that I have accepted the fact that inequality is an ongoing experience. Yin and yang do exist, the light and the dark. That polarity does exist. When I become aware of the polarity in and of itself, no one is responsible for the polarity. No one is responsible for the light and the dark. One is responsible to become aware of its existence. And so when that which is darkness appears and is legislated or mandated towards the light, then my activism of resistance and accepting that as my truth becomes this beautiful thing that not only restores my faith and understanding and knowing that I am never separate from the absolute, but it's sort of an act where I say, that's not my truth. And because it's not my truth, I will not let it rob me of my joy. I will not let anything mandate that I am less than or unworthy. And here are the actions in which I exhibit in order to be congruent with that stance. Do you see the two differences there? And so each of us possess both things. We have both spent time in the camps of both of these forms of resistance. And what I want to remind you today is that in this camp over here, this camp that knows the truth, that knows that light can never be expelled by anything dark, that the absolute absorbs the relative. And therefore, I am never absent from that which is God, from that which is love, from that which is wisdom, no matter what the landscape or the volume of personality wants to shout at me that I am not. My responsibility is to resist believing in that and to continue an advocacy through my word, through my action, through my thought, through my deeds, that I will get up and rise in the face of anything unlike that, and I will know my truth anyway. Over here, I'm spending a lot of time running and avoiding. And so the commonality in both of these things is the opportunity to accept what is. Accepting what is not allowing what is, it is accepting the nature of the human experience. And as I accept it, the resistance then stops being such a polarity experience and becomes a unionized experience where I rise, and in my rising, I give others permission to rise as well. As I remember, others remember. And so I reach out to you in this moment and I ask you to join me in remembering that the resistance that I'm talking about that serves you is the one that understands there is no power. There is nothing outside of you because you are a part of the absolute. And there are times when it looks scary. There are times when worldly things seemingly appear to be removing from us. And the fear of that removal shows us the level of attachment that we carry, but it also shows us impermanence. And it also gives us the opportunity to know and to remember that throughout all of time, as things have been taken away, the one who is in the position of seemingly losing something has in front of them the opportunity to accept that all things are impermanent, and in letting that happen and go without grasping, clinging, or craving, experiences the rush of having more than one could ever imagine beyond transactional things. You might want to re-listen to this at your convenience because, like you, it is necessary for me to remember. It is necessary for me to see where this side of resistance wants to keep avoiding. And yes, it happens because, again, I am a relative being in an absolute world, but I'm also an absolute being in this relative experience. And both of them need each other. Both of them are integrated in a way that provide you and I this blessed journey of reclaiming self-awareness. No matter how loud the noise, may you, in this moment, feel, feel the compassion and the championship that walks you home. May you, in this moment, hear the message, hear the clarion call that vocalizes, sings, speaks, reverberates your truth and cannot be denied. And may you begin to feel and witness all of the examples of just how deeply valuable you are, your lessons, your journey, and everything that makes and comprises of all the experiences that have brought you to this blessed now. One of my favorite things I ever heard was this: what was once my ceiling becomes my floor. What was once my ceiling becomes my floor, meaning there is a perpetual cycle, spiraling of evolution and expansion where we become more comfortable in the skin of our absolute and allow that which is the relative to not drive the bus anymore, to not be the leader of our reactions. Imagine walking in this world, but not being of this world, and bringing light and care and nourishment and provision to all who are ready to receive it. You are so deeply loved. May there be space within you to hear that and accept that this day. Namaste.